Okay, so today we're going to dig into a really interesting, kind of provocative idea about one of the most famous buildings in the world, the UK Parliament. What if the very thing we think we should protect most about it, its heritage, is actually what's holding it back? Let's get into it.
You've probably been there, right? You're in a discussion, a big idea's on the table, and then someone drops a single word that just shuts it all down. When we talk about places like Parliament, that word is almost always historic. It's said with this weight, this finality, as if history itself has spoken and the debate is over. But what if that's missing the point?
And look, it's an understandable reaction. The Palace of Westminster is this incredibly powerful symbol. But when heritage gets used like a veto, what are we really trying to protect? Is it the actual building, the traditions, or is it something else? That's what we're going to unpack.
So let's start by kind of poking at this idea of Parliament as some unchanging ancient monument. Because the reality? Well, it's a lot more recent and a lot more flexible than most of us think.
Here's something that might surprise you. The House of Commons chamber, the one we all see on the news, it's not some medieval relic. Nope, it was actually destroyed by bombs back in 1941 and then completely rebuilt by 1950. They had to make urgent choices about its design, not because they wanted to erase history, but out of pure necessity. And that really gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? If the entire institution could survive a total reconstruction, why are we now treating even small, careful adjustments as some kind of betrayal of its history? The logic just doesn't quite add up. This is where the subtle trap lies. What starts out as a really noble goal, preservation, can slowly, quietly harden into paralysis. It shifts from, hey, let's take care of this important place, to don't touch anything just in case. And for a living, breathing institution, that is a really dangerous place to be. There's this quote from the source material that just nails it. An institution that can't adapt starts to feel less historic and more, well, embalmed, like a monument to the past instead of a dynamic space for the present. So what's really going on here? What's driving this resistance? Right, so if this resistance to change isn't just about protecting some old stonework, what's the actual anxiety here? In this next part, we're going to peel back the layers and look at the deeper fears at play. Think about it. When people raise these kinds of objections, they very rarely get into the weeds about specific architectural details. The concern seems to be much deeper, and honestly, it has very little to do with the physical building at all. Okay, so if it's not the building, then what is it? The anxiety, it seems, is about something way more fundamental. What actually happens inside that building? And here it is. This is the real fear, that changing the space might actually change how people behave. The worry is that the confrontational, almost theatrical nature of politics could soften up. The heritage argument then becomes less about history and more about protecting familiar patterns of behavior, even if those patterns aren't working so well anymore. Now, of course, there are some pretty reasonable objections to this whole line of thinking. So it's really important we take a moment to address them because they're a key part of this whole conversation. So you hear people say, isn't this all just symbolism? Well, the counter is that the space is already sending powerful symbolic signals. We're just suggesting we should be conscious of them. Then there's politics is supposed to be adversarial. Sure, but adversarial doesn't have to mean performative combat. And finally, is this all just a distraction? The goal isn't some magic fix, but maybe it's about removing some of the unnecessary friction that gets in the way of good government. Okay, this brings us to a final and I think really crucial idea. What if we've been thinking about heritage all wrong? What if we could reframe it, not as something static and frozen, but as something alive? Maybe the true heritage isn't about the specific benches or the sightlines. Maybe it's about the core purpose of Parliament itself: representation, scrutiny, legitimacy. Those are the values that really need protecting, not just a particular physical layout from 1950. And look, this isn't about criticizing history or saying the past was wrong. Not at all. The design choices made back then made sense for their time. But the world today, the present, it asks different things of that same space. And just acknowledging that isn't an insult to the past, it's actually our responsibility to the present. And this is really the key takeaway. For an institution like Parliament to even have a future, it has to be allowed to adapt, Adaptation isn't the threat to its history, it's the very thing that allows its history to continue. It's what keeps it from becoming just another museum piece. So we're left with this question. If the physical building isn't the real barrier, and if heritage doesn't have to be a veto, then what other forces are at play? What's shaping Parliament in ways we rarely even stop to notice? Because the strongest pressures, well, they might not be made of stone at all. And that's a thought to take with you.